The Standoff at Midnight outline. One introduction to the protagonist named Marcus M.J. Johnson, a 34-year-old black man and a war veteran, recently returned from serving overseas. Backstory. MJ had served in the military for over a decade and earned multiple commendations for bravery. After retiring, he tried to return to civilian life in a small town in America, seeking peace and normalcy. He struggles with PTSD and the difficult transition from soldier to civilian current situation. He's working a humble job at a local diner, trying to rebuild his life, living alone in a modest apartment. Introduction to the antagonists. Racist gang. The gang, a group of 5 white supremacists who run a local drug operation. They harass and intimidate minorities, especially black residents. Their leader, Derek the Bull Hanley, a former high school football star with a penchant for violence. Their motivation: they feel threatened by the growing diversity in the town and have made it a point to keep non-white people in a state of fear. 3. Conflict. Introduced. Marcus starts noticing strange encounters with the gang around town. The gang starts targeting him, trying to provoke him by using racial slurs and threats. Not knowing about his military background, tensions rise as the gang begins following Marcus, making veiled threats and damaging his property. 4. The encounter. One evening, after leaving his shift at the diner, Marcus walks home, only to be cornered by the gang in an alleyway. The gang tries to intimidate him, but Marcus doesn't respond the way they expect. Instead, he stands tall, calm, but unflinching. 5. He moment of confrontation. The weapon. Marcus, having faced violence and hatred in the past, carries a concealed firearm, legally owned. His military experience has taught him how to handle weapons in life-threatening situations, but he never wanted to use it. The freeze, when the gang leader, Derek, steps forward with a knife and taunts Marcus. The others also draw weapons. But when Marcus reaches into his jacket, pulls out a sleek military-grade pistol and aims it at Derek, the entire gang freezes. There's a moment of silence, broken only by the sound of their breath and the sharp click of the safety being turned off. The tables are turned. The once confident gang members are paralyzed by fear. Part 1. Marcus M.J. Johnson. The silent veteran Marcus M.J. Johnson had seen things that no one should ever have to witness. In his 10 years of service, he had walked through hell and back, from the scorching sands of Afghanistan to the jungle heat of the Philippines. The military had taught him discipline, resilience, and the will to survive. But what it couldn't prepare him for was coming home. His hometown in North Carolina had been his sanctuary for years. A place where he thought he could finally lay down his weapons, both literal and figurative. He was a hero in the eyes of his fellow soldiers. But here, in the small town he grew up in, he was just another black man trying to make his way. The town had changed. It wasn't the same sleepy little place he remembered. There were whispers of unrest in the streets, murmurs about outsiders, people who didn't look like the rest. Marcus had never been one to pay attention to the racial undertones of small-town life. He'd learned to ignore it, or at least that's what he told himself. But then, things started to escalate. It started with small gestures, kids calling him names from across the street, an older woman clutching her purse a little tighter when he walked past her. Little things that spoke volumes. He'd learned long ago to ignore them. But then the gang appeared. They didn't hide who they were. They wore their hate like a badge of honor. Derek the Bull Hanley, their leader, was a man who had no shame. Tall, broad, with a twisted sense of power. He led a crew of men who were equally as deluded, feeding off each other's hatred and fear. Marcus first encountered them on his way back from the diner. The group of them were hanging out by the local bar, laughing loudly, throwing insults at anyone who walked by. Marcus kept his head down, hoping to pass unnoticed, but Derek spotted him well. "Well," Derek said, his voice dripping with contempt, "look what we have here. The war hero, coming back to the real world." He took a step closer, squaring off with Marcus. The others followed suit, surrounding him. "You think you're better than us?" Marcus said nothing. He knew better than to respond to the bait. He'd fought wars where men died with no more than a whisper. Words had no meaning in a battle for survival. Derek wasn't satisfied with silence. He lunged forward, shoving Marcus's chest. "I'm talking to you, soldier. You think just because you wore the uniform you're above us?" Marcus took a breath. This was not a fight he was looking for, but it was one he was ready for. "Walk away," Marcus said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "Or what?" Derek spat. "You gonna call for help? Is that what you do now? Run to the cops? Bet they'll be here in 5 minutes to arrest someone like you." The others chuckled, stepping closer, cracking their knuckles. The smell of whiskey on their breath hung heavy in the air. Marcus's hand subtly moved to the inside of his jacket. He felt the cold, comforting metal of the gun he kept there. A tool of self-defense. A silent reminder that he was no longer just a soldier, he was a man who had learned how to protect himself. Part 2. The gang's approach. The confrontation was about to take a darker turn. Derek, emboldened by the cheers of his crew, took a step back and pulled out a knife. It gleamed under the fading light of the street lamp. His expression twisted with malice. "You really think you can just walk through life like a big shot? You're nothing but a black man who got lucky, soldier. You're just like the rest of them. Scared." With a mocking smile, he moved forward, the blade flicking menacingly through the air. The others laughed, emboldened by their leader's actions. Marcus stood motionless, his face unreadable. Derek jabbed the knife in front of Marcus's face, aiming for intimidation. But something in Marcus's demeanor shifted. Without a word, Marcus reached into his jacket, his fingers brushing against the cool grip of his firearm. His body was still, but his eyes were sharp, focused. In a smooth motion, he pulled out the weapon, his hand steady, trained by years of precision under pressure. "Not today," Marcus said, his voice hard as steel. The gang froze,